Sampson's great meltdown. Sampson had an issue. He kept falling in love with the wrong people. Anybody know anything about that? Sampson, chapter 15 tells us that he had 20 good years of service after God took the mess he made and turned it into a ministry in chapter 15, which was only necessary because everything that looked good to him wasn't good for him in chapter 14. He hooked up with a pretty woman. And that opportunity, and we know about that. You can go back and read it. But the thing I want you to keep in mind is that he had 20 years of good service. He had 20 years where he judged Israel. And the Bible simply says one day. See, I can preach 20 minutes on just one day. But we're not going to be here all day today. But one day, see, Satan never stops looking to get us. Even though he had 20 years of good service, even though he had been a judge now, he was a senior in his ministry as a judge, and you might say he was having a midlife crisis. He would have been in the late teens, early 20s in chapter 15, and some 20 years later that would put him in his late 30s or early 40s. Maybe he was having a midlife crisis. I don't know, but he had 20 years of good service. And even though he had been faithful and had good service and was doing all of the right things, Satan was still out to get him. And what I want to share with us is that we are all subject to meltdowns. Don't ever think you've gotten to the point in your walk that you are not subject to a meltdown. Don't ever think that things are going so well that I have arrived. We never arrive. Well, not in this life. When you arrive, the only time we arrive is when we see the pearly gates of heaven. When you see them, then you have arrived. But until then, we are all subject to meltdowns. A meltdown, scientifically, is when something is exposed to a heat source above its temperature rating. A meltdown is when something is exposed to a heat source that is above its temperature rating. You know, we all got ratings. We all got ratings. And if the heat is hot enough, if the right kind of pressure is turned up in our lives, we could be subject to a meltdown. And see, in order for a meltdown to happen, the object has to be close to a heat source that is above its rating.
All right.
Don't miss that. Don't miss that.
All right.
See, because if you don't get too close to the heat source, then you won't have a meltdown. But if you're too close to something that is subject to be more strenuous, greater than your rating, more than what you can handle, you are subject to have a meltdown.
All right.
You see, everything has a melting point. This metal has a melting point. That glass, even though it's glass, if you turn the heat up hot enough and put this glass into a fire, even this glass, as hard as it is, it has a melting point. It has a point when the temperature is exceeding its rating to stay in its form and do that which it was constructed to do, because the heating that it is now close to has exceeded the rating of the cup. And then I can't drink water out of it anymore. We all have melting points. We all have boiling points. We all have a point where the molecular structure of the object changes. Everything has different ratings. And see, I'm not rated like you're rated. You're not rated like he's rated. He's not rated like she's rated. We're all rated differently.
Amen.
We've been learning that in Bible study, that something that will melt you down won't necessarily melt her down, because she has a different rating than you do. Today's lesson is a familiar warning that we were taught a long